All right, Shalom. All praises unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rachel Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. And Shalom to the hopeful elect Akim that teaching this word. Shalom Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rachel Kodash. Now, as you can see here, this is a picture of a radio host in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Her name was Hanoi Hannah. And she would come on, she's like a North Vietnamese. And she would basically, they were using like psychological warfare on the GIs over there in Vietnam, the American GIs. And she would basically be telling them your government's corrupt, your government's, sending you to die in a war. You have no understanding why you're even here, etc. And she would come on, I think like 3 to 4 times in the day or in the night. And, the GIs would all hear her on the radio. So it affected them over time. It was like a psychological warfare. But her name's Hanoi Hannah. And what I found interesting is she would target also the black GIs. Telling them to go home, etc. Telling them your own government back home. Because remember, during this period, you had a lot of political upheaval in America. You had a lot of, racial tension and things of that nature that was taking place in Babylon, all right? I believe Martin Luther King died during this period. You had a lot of things going on. And then at the same time, GIs were getting sent, young lads, young boys was getting sent to the jungles to fight a war. They had no understanding of why they're even there, all right? So, and it was, and you're fighting she was saying you're fighting for a country that doesn't even respect you on your own soil. So let me play this and then I'm going to read some scriptures because, it just made me think. Basically, a lot of our people, they're joined onto Esau's system where they even go to wars for this man, basically. And what does the scripture says? The scriptures talk about joining onto Esau. In the end, those that have joined onto him, you're going to fall by the sword. And today, you fast forward to today, a lot of our people are completely attached to the hip with Esau. They can't let go of the American lifestyle, the American way of life. Even if they don't like so-called white people, they can't see. You got our people that, let's say they're not in the truth, they don't like so-called white people. They ain't got the spirit of America being destroyed, basically. They think they're going to make their hereafter in America. America was set up to be our punishment, man. But you see, you got a lot of our people completely attached to the ways of life of Babylon. So let me play this here and then I'm going to read some scriptures. Because the same thing happens today. Here it is. The Vietnam War, the shit show that was. But then guess what? You still got thousands of Jakes join the military till this day. So it really didn't change anything. But let me play this here. And guess what? Those Jakes that join the military, man, you're going to, that you're over there fighting for Esau and all these different foreign lands. Well, the time's coming where you're going to be in that Levant area. And, the troops are going to be gathered for the day of Armageddon. And then you're going to all be destroyed, man. And you're going to wake up, you Negroes that's over there fighting for Esau, you're going to wake up in your right mind. So let me play this here.
Suspicion about whether any of this was worth dying for, and speaking directly into them. The broadcasts directed at black soldiers were particularly calculated. When she read news about the civil rights movement, about urban uprisings, about police violence, about the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., she was delivering information that Armed Forces Vietnam Network Radio was deliberately not reporting. AFVN...
Yeah, because Esau's, like you just mentioned, Armed Forces Vietnam Radio, which is the American radio that was over there, they wasn't reporting what was going on back home. But the North Vietnamese, they were reporting to the GIs exactly what was taking place on American soil.
Was tightly censored. It didn't cover domestic protest. It didn't cover racial violence. It didn't report the true scale of American casualties or the growing political opposition to the war at home. American soldiers who wanted to know what was actually happening in their own country tuned in to Hanoi Hannah. Not because they agreed with her politics, because she was telling them things their own military radio was withholding. The censorship that was supposed to protect troop morale was, in practice, sending soldiers to the enemy's broadcaster for domestic news. For black soldiers already facing disproportionate combat assignments and casualty rates, the patterns that the NAACP was simultaneously documenting stateside, her arguments about fighting a war for a country that wouldn't protect them at home were not abstract propaganda. They were descriptions of something those soldiers were already living. The internal MACV assessments noted this specifically. They had no good answer for it.
My name is Sagar Sheikh. More than 500,000 people.
Satan, man. So
Nearly a
The internal MACV assessments noted this specifically. They had no good answer for it. The American counteroperation was substantial and ultimately insufficient. Armed Forces Vietnam Network, AFVN, was the primary response. It broadcast rock and roll, comedy, sports, and carefully filtered news. Adrian Cronauer, whose posting to AFVN in 1965 became the basis for the film Good Morning Vietnam, was part of this effort. The film, decades later, would portray him as...
So yeah, that's that's the point I wanted to get out of that, because she was telling the black GIs what was going on back in America, basically. What you doing here fighting for these devils, basically. And they always show you that in Vietnam War movies. But you see, our people are attached to Esau's system so much so that they die for Esau, basically. They die for Babylon, for America. So let me read this here. And we told them, and the Lord set up the prophets of the Lord, man. The men of Great Millstone are all over America telling our people the truth. The truth is out there publicly. It's all over the world, all right? And we've told our people what's going on in Esau's system, what he's doing, etc., to come out of him, come out of his ways of life. But, as we know, this is for the elect. See, the majority of our people, they're going to die on this side, man. So this is Isaiah 30 from the top. It says, "Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin." Exactly. So who's that talking about? The rebellious children is talking about the Israelites, Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. All right? And they take counsel, but not of me. Yeah, they don't take counsel of Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, in the truth. You know what they take counsel of? Esau, Edom. They take counsel of Esau and his world. What does Whitey think? Even deep down, even a lot of those radical so-called blacks and all that in America, you really under Esau's spirit, man. Esau controls all of that. See, if you ain't in this truth, if you ain't a Negro, Latino, Native American, and you're not in this truth and worship who you really are under Yahweh Shai, really you still worship the system of Esau anyway. However which way you want to look at it. Right? See, most of our people, they want to build something, in Esau's structure, in his system, in his world, basically. Okay? But that's not going to happen. So it says that take that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. That walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen them. Have not asked at my mouth. They walk to go down to Egypt. What's modern day Egypt? America, Babylon the Great. So our people follow the ways of Egypt, man. America is the modern Egypt. Okay? That walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. And that's what our people do. They strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and they trust in the shadow of Egypt. So they trust in the shadow of this system. So they follow exactly what Esau tells them. They follow the ways of life of this place. All right? They've been in Babylon too long, man. They've completely lost who they are. I mean, there is an awakening happening, but, the full 100% truth is for the elect. The elect is the only one that's fully understanding what's fully taking place in this world. All right? Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. Exactly. So the strength of Pharaoh shall be your shame. So the trusting in the so-called white man's world is going to lead to the shame of our people. And ultimately what it's going to lead to really is the nuclear destruction. All right? The nuclear destruction is going to lead to the destruction of Babylon the Great, which is America. And the majority of our people, they're going to be destroyed in this system. All right? They're going to be destroyed in nuclear missiles. For not coming back to Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. Remember a few years back, you had that video with the chariot it was on all the social media platforms, and you had that Jake screaming at the chariot, talking about that this is what the government's hiding from us, y'all. We need to get ready, etc. Talking about fighting the chariot. That dummy don't know that those are his people up in them things, man. Up in them beings, up in them the heavenly ships. Those are angels, which are part of the nation of Israel. So-called, well, I was gonna say so-called black men. You know, so-called black men. You know, the angels have, you know, lions' heads also, etc. But they're Jakes, basically. That's the point. And they're up in them ships. And he was talking about, you don't know if y'all remember that, and he was talking about, you know, that's what the government ain't telling us, y'all. Remember that video? Anyway, man. So it says, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. For his princes were, that's the point. So trusting in the shadow of Egypt will be the confusion of our people. You know? And you know, you still till this day, even with the shit show of Vietnam, the Vietnam War, when they were telling the black GIs to go home, etc. Even with all of that, you still have our people join onto Esau, go fight his wars. Go kill the heathens on Esau's behalf, basically. You know? Why? Because they trust in this system. They trust in the Western Empire, basically. Okay? This is Isaiah. Let me read this here. Isaiah 13 and 14. It says, this is when, see, this is going into basically when the tables turn on the Edomites, which is the Edomites, if you don't know, are the so-called white people today, the Grecians. So this is when the tables turn on them. So this is Isaiah 13 and 14. It says, and it shall be as a chased roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. This is talking about the so-called white man. He's going to be like a chased roe, a deer, basically, because everyone's going to be turning on him, man. The nation, this is already happening. The foreign nations, they're already turning on Esau. All right? But then, even in-house, man, it's going to have all the, you know, in Babylon itself, there's going to be a massive, there is racial divides, but there's going to be a racial war. All right? And then, you know, people going to be turning on the Edomites. So this is what it says. And everyone, and it shall be as a chased roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people and flee everyone into his own land. And that's happening now. People are fleeing from Babylon. East Indians, Arabs, Chinese people, you know, Vietnamese people, all going back to their own countries. Because the Japanese people, Koreans, they're going back to their own countries because they've had enough of America. All right, capitalism and the American way of life is prophecy. All right, America's coming to its end. So people are fleeing. It says, everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. Exactly. So that's talking about the so-called white man, basically, man. And our people. You know, if you're and the other nations, if you're joined onto the because you got a lot of our people that die hard and will die for the so-called white man. They want to defend his way of life, defend him till the end, basically. Well, the scripture says if you're joined onto them, you're going to die with them. So if you're a so-called black, Hispanic, and Native American woman that's married to a so-called white man, an Edomite, you're going to die with him in that day if you want to join onto them. You are joined onto them already, but if you don't depart from them, you're going to die with them. Because the Lord, what did the scripture says? The Lord's come to divide, man, to divide, not to bring to, he's come to, it mentioned that the Lord came to divide, basically, because he's a separator of the nations, man. The Lord ain't come to bring the world together. White men marry black women and all that bullshit, man. And white men marry Hispanic women. No, the Lord's come to divide. So if you're joined onto the so-called white man, you're going to die with him. All right? And that's what the scripture says here. Everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. The same applies to the military. If you're a so-called military serviceman fighting for the Western Empire, fighting for Esau's world, you're going to die with them. And we know a lot of our people, they're joined onto Esau's system. They're over there in the Middle East, etc., on different campaigns. Well, you're going to die over there. You know, in Armageddon, you're going to die, all right? You're going to be destroyed. So this is Zechariah. Zechariah 13 and 8. Zechariah 13 and 8. It says, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, and I will refine them as silk. Yeah, so that's it. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. The 2 parts talking about the 2/3, man. They're going to die in America. That's talking about 2/3 of Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans that trust in in the Western Empire, you're gonna die there. Basically, that's the 2/3. All right, and the third that shall be left therein, but the third shall be left therein, and cut off and die. Yeah? But the third shall be left therein. That's talking about the elect, the 1/3 and the elect. That's going to be delivered when Babylon's destroyed, because the majority of our people, they're gonna die in America. All right, for trusting in that lifestyle, they're gonna die in there, man. Okay, and I will bring the third part through the fire, and I will refine them as silver is refined, and I will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord is my power. Exactly, because the elect are going to be delivered through the fire, man. So that's, you know, I just wanted to make that quick point. But even in Vietnam, the Vietnamese, they were telling the black GIs to go home. What are you doing here, basically? Why are you fighting for the so-called white man? But, you know, that's the captivity of our people. Our people are in a deep sleep, and they still fight for Esau, man. But like the scripture says, if you're joined unto them, you're gonna die with them, man. Okay, and that's just the straight truth of it all. You know, because the Lord's only dealing with the elect, all right, of his blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, so-called. That's who the Lord's dealing with. So, you know, with that, I'm gonna say all praises unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect Akim that are teaching this word. Shalom, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach Kodash. Shalom, shalom.